Hello, everybody, and welcome back to chapter number 2, where we're going to talk about production, economic growth, and trade. Now that we have a general idea about what economics is about in general, we can use a lot of the assumptions that we built up into building up our very first model with the PPF, or the Production Possibilities Frontier. So we're going to start off pretty simple when we start off this first half of the chapter, where we just talk about production in general. We want to go ahead and see exactly what are the questions every economy needs to ask itself, and exactly what are the factors of production that goes into any one production process. Once we do that, we're going to be able to build up this PPF model and see how it exactly translates into some type of idea of trade and specialization. So remember key principle number 3 from the previous chapter: specialization can lead to gains for all involved. We're going to use this model to see exactly why this is going to be that case. So here in this chapter, we'll build up this PPF model and then introduce a little bit of the specialization and trade ideas that are so prevalent within economics. So first of all, we just want to talk about production in general, and there are 3 questions that every economy has to answer. So what goods and services are to be produced, how are these goods and services produced, and who will receive these goods and services. So let's go ahead and open up this discussion just a little bit with these 3 questions right here. So questions every economy has to answer. Questions each economy must answer. Each economy must answer. So even before the production process begins, these are the 3 questions that every economy, every nation has to ask itself in order to make sure that it has some type of good production process. So number 1, what goods and services are to be produced? Number 1, what goods and services are to be produced? Are to be produced. And how do you think any one country or nation is going to answer this? How exactly does it know what good or what service to bring out into the marketplace? In terms of this, it really depends on what society demands or what society wants. It sort of belies on their taste and preferences. So it depends on what society wants. On what society wants. And the tastes and preferences of any one country are going to vastly differ from another country. So it really depends on what the citizens or individuals within this particular economy desire. So take this for example. So here in the good old US of A, United States of America, what do we really like a lot of? Well, we like a lot of cars. A typical answer that students like to say is, here in the United States, we like guns. So we have a very strange fascination with guns. And what does this tell us about the gun market in the United States? Do we have a large market or do we have a small market for guns? And because we like guns, we have a very large gun market. So this is exactly a type of good that we are going to produce here in the United States, because we do have, the society does like this particular good. But suppose that we go across the pond over to our neighbors in the United Kingdom, so UK. What kind of taste and preferences, what type of goods and services do the United Kingdom like instead? You can say they like tea. So this is a very typical answer. So they like, let me put this here, they like tea. If you wanted to be a little bit more dark with your answer, you could say they like knives instead, but let's go ahead and say tea and biscuits right here. So if they like tea, what does this tell us about the tea market in the UK? That just tells us that they have a large tea market. So essentially, with all of this, what goods and services are to be produced really depends on what society wants. And as you can see right here, 2 countries, 2 kind of similar countries, but with different tastes and preferences. And that just tells us that, hey, the markets for each particular good and service is also going to be different as well. Number 2, the second question that we can ask is, how exactly are these goods and services produced? So how do we produce guns? How do we produce tea? Because they are 2 entirely different goods. So how are these goods and services produced? How are these goods and services produced? So as we can see right here, because we are working with a whole bunch of variety of different goods, that just tells us that we need some type of mixture of factors of production or resources, or different resources to produce these particular goods. The resources to make guns is going to be entirely different for the resources to make tea, and so on. So this is going to be answered by saying, hey, it requires some mix of available resources. Requires some mix of available resources. And in economics, the fancy way that we say resources here is something known as our factors of production. Factors of production. And we're going to hit on this idea of the factors of production a little bit more throughout the rest of this chapter. But in general, we can see that these factors of production, land, labor, physical capital, and technology, these are the only resources that we can use in order to produce these goods and services. And then finally here, the third question that we can answer, or we have to ask, is who exactly is going to receive these goods and services? So who will receive these goods and services? These goods and services. And the simplest way to answer this is, well, hey, it depends on the citizens, right? So here, once we produce these goods, we put them out into the market, we have the right factors of production, the right mixture of these resources, we, the consumers, should be receiving these goods and services. If we wanted to be a little bit more general, we can say that it depends on the distribution or the type of economic system that the economy or nation has. So here we'll be a little bit more general. It depends on distribution. On distribution. And in terms of distribution, this is just saying the way that the economy is set up or how it allocates its particular resources or the goods and services. So the way the economy allocates its goods and services. Allocates its goods and services. So with this, there are going to be two main types of distribution or economic systems that we take a look at. And I'm pretty sure you guys know what these two systems are based on your civics class or your sort of government classes right here. So the main one that you guys should have honed in on, number one, is going to be the capitalist or market system. Capitalist/market system. Market system. And this is exactly the type of economic system that we have here in the United States, and the vast majority of countries do follow nowadays. Under the capitalist or market system, this is where we as citizens, firms, and corporations are free to choose exactly what they want to bring out into the market. There's actually very, very little government intervention. Formally, we can say that private individuals and firms own most of the resources, and make their own decisions. So once again, the capitalist, the market system, private individuals and firms own most of the resources and make their own decisions. And like we said before, the vast majority of countries nowadays fall under this capitalist or market system. United States, Canada, vast majority of countries in Europe, Asia. There are just so many good sort of benefits that we do have following this capitalist or market system because we are free to make our own decisions. And under this, guys, we can also have a special phrase that falls under the capitalist system, which is known as laissez-faire. Laissez-faire. And laissez-faire just says that we have very little government intervention involved with these markets right here. And it's a French phrase that pretty much says leave it alone or hands off. So leave it alone or hands off. So very little government intervention within this type of economic system. The second type of economic system or distribution system that we can hone in on is going to be the complete opposite of the capitalist system, which is the planned economy. Planned economy. And under the planned economy, this is exactly where there's a very heavy presence of government intervention. Basically, the government owns all of the resources and they make the decisions for everybody. So here, formally, we can say that the state owns most of the resources, and the central government makes the decisions. And the central government makes the decisions. So you as an individual have really no say about exactly what you want to bring out to the marketplace. The government says, hey, we're producing this good right here. You have to go ahead and produce this good, or you're going to have to receive this good. You have no say in this matter. And there are a few countries that still do follow this planned economy or the communist type of system. There's Cuba, North Korea, Venezuela, Red China in the past. So here, the planned economy, not a lot of countries follow it nowadays because there's just not a lot of benefit for any one country to be following it, which is why most of the systems that we do see nowadays do fall under this market system. So here we have the two types of economic distribution systems right here, and we can see exactly this is exactly who is going to be receiving the goods and services that the economy is going to be producing. So here, three basic questions that every single economy has to answer. And in the next video, we're going to go ahead and hone in on question number 2 just a little bit more. So how are these goods and services produced? And that's exactly where we're going to go ahead and talk about our factors of production just a little bit more into detail. I'll see you guys there.